Episode of Wrestling Tonight right here on the Turnbuckle Tavern, live from No Cell Studios. I'm the Ace of Tavern, Acefield Retro, and joined as always by one half of the co-founders of Turnbuckle Tavern, that one bad Chad. What's up, dude?
What's going on, man? Good weekend. I had a little bit of a getaway, but I got to catch up on some of the wrestling. I'm excited to talk about it. And, you know, SummerSlam's right around the corner, so there'll be some news going in and out of that. So, you know, the news of pro wrestling keeps on rolling.
Always keeps rolling, and we have every single week something to break down, and sometimes the stories are bigger than others, and we're finally out of the shadow of what was like that really big weekend that we had circled, that Triple Mania weekend, and everything going on that end. So now that we finally have some clarity, as you mentioned, we're about to kind of get through the forest and get to Detroit, Michigan, Ford Field for SummerSlam, which is another stopping point. Usually it would be like the end of the summer, but it's really early on this year, and it feels like there's a lot more of wrestling, all companies combined, that the summer is going to be culminating a lot later than we probably anticipated.
Absolutely, man. August is going to be a big month, not only for this show and the news of pro wrestling, but just pro wrestling in general. You're kicking off August with SummerSlam. You're ending August with a double shot of All In and All Out. So much big stuff going to be coming with those, going in and out of those events. But episodes like tonight, even though we're breaking down an event in ROH Death Before Dishonor, I love episodes like this week because we get to dive a little deeper into maybe some of the smaller stories that deserve some conversation, but may not get that conversation on big news week. So I'm excited to get into it.
Absolutely. And as we know, wrestling continues to thrive on all capacities. And the biggest thing we pull away from this is, and I think J-Bone said it on Rawdown, wrestling's fun, man. It's just a good time to be a wrestling fan. And I like the positivity where we can talk about the stuff that's good and not stuck under the cloud. It felt like our show was based around the Vince McMahon scandal for the longest time. Now we're finally able to break down things like the three topics we have today. But without further ado, let's get into big story number one.
Big stories. Story 1.
Ring of Honor, Death Before Dishonor from Trenton, New Jersey. And man, we kind of, I wouldn't say buried it last week on the build, but we went into this event not really knowing what to expect to get our weekend started for Ring of Honor. And there was a lack of build. And I think everyone would admit that. Even Tony Khan admitted that on the media call where he was discussing all the things that went into it, the contingency plans and the injuries that went into it. And not to mention Eddie Kingston kind of being granted freedom to go do the G1, and then Mark Briscoe gets injured. But I would say, all things considered, we had a really fun night of wrestling. That this always happens, man, when these shows that are under assuming and they're not built up well, similar to Forbidden Door, the first one, where everyone's like, man, this is a disaster. Those are the cards. Maybe it's because our expectations are lower, Chad. I went in and I had a great time watching all these matches. And it was well worth the money that we spent.
Oh yeah. I mean, I remember back being a UFC fan, and they would have these fight nights that were free on Spike TV in the early days of UFC. It became like a running joke within the mixed martial arts community. You know, when you're sleeping on those fight nights that may not have the big names like the Chuck Liddells and Randy Couture's of that day, those were the cards that exploded and gave you the future of the business. You know, the Nick and Nate Diaz, the Diaz brothers, those type of figures that would become these larger than life figures later on in mixed martial arts history. I feel like in pro wrestling, it's the same thing. I hear Seth at Chick Foley always talk about, the cards that aren't built that well. Sometimes those will be the most fun shows to watch. And with Death Before Dishonor, it had its issues as far as like build, stories, all of that. But I think those are issues that are just kind of permeating through the promotion itself. But if you're looking just for like bell to bell, entertaining Friday night, sitting at home, want to watch some great pro wrestling, I feel like Death Before Dishonor over delivered.
Oh, absolutely. And we got started with a match that kind of set the tone for the night. Gravity defeated Commander with Alex Abrahantes in his corner. Stellar opener, pace setter type of match. And the other thing I pulled from this, of course, Commander came on our radar not too long ago. I mean, earlier on in this year, maybe late 2022. Gravity, this is someone that everyone's kind of known about on the periphery, but this is his biggest spot in North America, at least on an AEW Ring of Honor stage. And I thought he did a good job of shining here. Commander, as we know, we can herald him with all the praise. Well deserved. This dude is awesome. We saw what he did in GCW, continues to impress in AEW and Ring of Honor. But the history with the three of these guys, including Bandito, of course, Bandito's out with an injury. Gravity is Bandito's brother. The three of these guys were a group in a Mexican independent scene. So they were doing things together, very familiar as opponents and as teammates. And I think AEW, when Bandito gets healthy, to put the three of these guys together in some luchador type of faction, I think that could be a lot of fun on a main stage.
I mean, they are tailor-made for the trios division. You throw Gravity, Bandito, and Commander in a group together, throw Alex Abrahantes with them, maybe have a loose connection to the Lucha Brothers because they've got that Alex Abrahantes connection there. This could be a lot of fun, and we're pining for, more teams in not only AEW's trios division, but ROH's 6-man division. So we've got those 6-man titles. So I did not know that about their history, about him being related to Bandito. I had no idea about that connection. I saw that Gravity obviously is impressing Tony Khan because I believe he's earned himself a match on Dynamite, correct?
Against Pac. Yeah. The man that Gravity forgot is going to be taken on Gravity. So it's he couldn't resist. Tony Khan couldn't resist.
Yeah. I think it's awesome, man. I've always been a big fan of, even Lucha House Party. Mm-hmm. I thought they were an underrated team that always put on really fun matches in WWE. And they never got a true like focused push behind them, but I love seeing that style come together because if they have this history, if they were in a faction in a Mexican independent, they're going to know each other's moves before the other one even. They can read each other's minds, it seems like, especially in Lucha. They flow so well when they're used to that in-ring time together. So I thought this match was fun. It's exactly what you would expect with Commander. I wasn't as familiar with Gravity, but we've been championing Commander since we caught him on GCW. So, yep. And I think it shows something that Tony put Alex Abrahantes with him. He might not be as big in the eyes of a casual fan, but if you're an AEW viewer, the fact that they stuck Alex with the Lucha Brothers, there's kind of that trademark with Alex, and by putting him with Commander, it allows me to think, okay, there's something here. They're putting a voice behind him while he gets his feet wet, getting to know the fans getting to know him. I like this match. I thought it was a lot of fun to kick it off.
Yeah, it's a similar approach to what they did with Don Callis and Takeshita. I don't know if Alex Abrahantes technically has heelish tendencies, but I would say the Lucha Brothers are pretty neutral as far as face/heel. Same thing with Commander. But I would like to see them have an edge to them. Like Lucha Underground, we saw that side of Pentagon Jr., even in Impact when he was, feuding with Sami Callihan, the side we saw of Penta that I think there's a lot of untapped potential with all these luchadors to kind of expand than just being this highlight race to the finish type of pace opener, which is awesome. I like seeing that, but I would like to see more depth to the characters. And I think we might get it if they're going to be committing to Bandito and Gravity and Commander, and then you got Penta and Rey Fenix. The Lucha division is thriving. And I think it's a good piece to have on your screens on a weekly basis.
I don't think anyone, like, not to cut you off, but I mean, if you stack up I won't even say AEW. I'll say the Tony Khan company, because it ROH and AEW is under that umbrella. If you stack Tony Khan's roster up against WWE or Impact or any other promotion, New Japan, Tony Khan's assembled a pretty stellar crop of luchadors. If you run down the list, it's second to none, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, also too, if he's able to get Vikingo full time, I mean, then you got really the best in the world. And
right.
And I think integrating them into your card just kind of helps accentuate the skills of everybody else. And I think Lucha's been very understated on our end, and everyone can speak about Rey Mysterio Jr. and the aspects of what he's brought to the American scene. But I mean, go down the list. I mean, Lucha is one of the more exciting things. It was what the cruiserweight division was built around in WCW. Hoovy and Psychosis are understated heroes of that time. Everyone wants to talk about Rey Mysterio, and rightfully so. But I mean, there's a lot of other pieces to that.
I mean, honestly, man, if I was Tony, I would be looking at the crop of guys I have, and I would be etching out a 10 to 15 minute block on my weekly TV, whether it be Collision or Dynamite. I would really like to see him lean into this on Collision and utilize these guys like Commander, Vikingo, Bandito, Ray Phoenix. Throw them in there with some of your other quote unquote cruiserweight type of guys and kind of do a WCW 97 cruiserweight revival series where every week we're getting matchups with these guys, because at the time, the hardcores were really loving it, seeing Dean Malenko and Ray and, like you said, Hoovy, Psychosis, all of these guys. The hardcores enjoyed it. But I think as history has went on, we look back at those matches like, man, we didn't realize what an impact that division at that time was having. Jericho, even Benoit, all of those dudes ripping it up. You have right now, like we just said, some of the best luchadors in the world. You throw some of your other guys in there. I'm thinking Action Andretti. I'm thinking Dante Martin when he's healthy. If you throw
AR
a lot
Fox,
of those, AR Fox, all of those guys, if you throw them in some sort of, not tournament because that's overused, but just give us like a division of these fast, quick, lightweight guys throwing on 10-minute bangers once a week. I think it would grow legs and it would really start building the fans behind these guys.
At the risk of fantasy booking us into oblivion right now, what about the TNT division being kind of given to that? Because right now it's been floating around doing nothing, and it's been struggling really since the Scorpio Sky, Sammy Guevara, even Cody Rhodes debacle. So giving this championship, like you said, it's a TV championship. Put him on TNT, TNT's Collision. Give him 15 minutes of between entrances and finish of the match. TNT championship is that division built around these guys. Add in a little bit of the ground and pound guys, like a guy like Roosh and Andrade. Like, I think you have a lot. I mean, there's something to it.
There's something there, man. There's something there. And I think Tony's smart. He looks to those days of WCW for inspiration, and hopefully that crosses his mind, because it seems like a no-brainer to me.
So you mentioned before there was, we're looking for 6-man teams, and there's a couple here that have been building up, and they're all looking to get to the embassy eventually. But we had this fight without honor match, the Dark Order, Alex Reynolds, Evil Uno, and John Silver, defeating the Righteous, which is Dutch and Vincent and Stu Grayson. Of course, Stu Grayson made his allegiance known with the Righteous. This has been going on in the undercard of the Ring of Honor TV show. These guys went all out for lack of story that's happening on the main radar. As I mentioned, it's being on these taped level ROH shows. It's been happening. Vicious, violent, some great high spots, a really fun match that, again, set the tone. I feel like everyone was building on top of each other. We went from the lucha piece to more high spots, but a little bit more violence on the edge of Dutch and Vincent bringing in Evil Uno. I think Evil Uno has been on something a little bit since that Moxley match he had. I think he's on a different edge of him. And every time I look at him a little bit differently since like him and Moxley went to war. So good match here.
No, yeah. And I'm loving kind of the mean streak they're giving Dark Order. I know they cut a promo where they were like, you want to see us go back to our old ways? Be careful what you wish for. And I'm liking that we're seeing Alex and Silver really lean into that edge. Like you said, Evil Uno has a burr up his ass ever since that Moxley match. And if it's me, man, I'm continuing to book Dark Order this way. I'm continuing to set them up to take that 6-man tag titles in ROH off of Mogul Embassy. I really hope they lean into this Dark Order thing and give them story on the weekly TV. Like, that's going to be a drum I'm beating with ROH lately. Like, the matches are always stellar. Just give us some more story here. Let some of this story reign through. And honestly, if you build Dark Order the right way, you've got 4 hours of primetime TV right now in AEW. I wouldn't be opposed to them kind of floating in between and working that trios division on a collision. You know, a match with the Dark Order against House of Black would be a lot of fun. Even if, you know, they capture the 6-man titles, I think that's something. If Tony's going to float between these two companies a little bit with certain talent, I wouldn't be opposed to seeing those 6-man tag titles going up against the trios titles in AEW. Have fun with that. Book it out. It doesn't have to be title for title, but to see a set of champs in Ring of Honor going up against, you know, the trios champs, you could do a lot of fun storytelling with that.
And showing how much he actually views the Dark Order and the Righteous, he decided not to feed them to the Embassy, where the Mogul Embassy have been on this dominant reign. We saw a really cool side of Brian Cage in the post-match interview when they're celebrating. Loved the side we saw of him, but they defended with the Forbidden Door open a little bit. New Japan Pro Wrestling stars, Master Wato, Taguchi, and Leon Ruffin were all in-house to take on a fun 6-man match. I mean, match kind of suffered on my end as far as watching. You knew that the Embassy was never losing this match. It's cool to see New Japan Pro Wrestling being featured, not just in Forbidden Door on those months lead up. It seems cool that ROH is still kind of utilizing them. And this is to further emphasize the story was really after the match for me with this Brian Cage interview. He showed a different side of himself. And there's something to be said about these two teams that fought before with the Fight Before Dishonor. And obviously the Dark Order got the win. So they feel like they're next up to take on the Embassy, which could have it could have some legs to it. I think it could be fun to have a really edgy Dark Order against the Mogul Embassy, which feels unstoppable with Prince Nana next to them. It's there's something there with the ROH 6-man titles felt like they were a lost cause. And it seems all of a sudden overnight, we have a division that seems to be thriving, and you bring back Bandito into ROH with Gravity Commander and Bandito. All of a sudden you have a really healthy division, dude.
No. Yeah. The 6-man tag titles are one of the more interesting tag titles, and partly because you can say what you want about Mogul Embassy, but I am a fan of the booking decision to keep those titles on these 3 guys. I've said from jump, I'm not the biggest Brian Cage fan, but I do enjoy some of his work. But I am a huge fan of Gates of Agony. I think they're underrated. I think they're an old school throwback tag team. And when they put Cage with these two dudes, just on eye test, that's a monster trio. That is a monster trio. And I know, you know, I just said it with Dark Order possibly floating in between AEW, but when you have two teams staring across the ring at each other, and you've got the 3 monsters in Mogul Embassy staring down House of Black, that gives me a little bit of goosebumps. I got to be honest, like just on eye test alone. And I think Toa and Khan are talented dudes. Like they just take me back. They take me back to those Power and Pain, Power Glory, the Faces of Fear, those old school bruiser tag teams from the early 90s, mid 90s. I get those vibes from those two dudes. And then you throw an absolute freak show in Brian Cage with them. If you're a guy who doesn't like the smaller wrestlers and you want big beefy dudes throwing cats around, that's Mogul Embassy you should be all over that.
Yeah. And dude, Brian Cage is such a mixed bag. As like I always say, he is like but Dave Bautista with Rey Mysterio's moveset in SmackDown vs. Raw 2006. You like put him on there because this guy, he works AAA a lot. Sometimes they put him under a mask. But Brian Cage is sneaky athletic, has a lucha flair to him. He does things that you feel like he couldn't do. I think he's the full package. If he was able to pull that energy he had from that post-match promo that he had after they won, he could be a different star. I just think they've never given him a chance to shine. And I love what he done on Impact. Of course, he made his hay there. Impact kind of made him who he is. But this is an example of it where if you give him the time to shine, and ROH might be the place to do it, Brian Cage can really be a contender, because I think he's been sort of having that Lance Archer treatment. He's been one of those guys that they float in. They need a viable contender. They build him up for 3 weeks after some squash matches, and then Hangman squashes them or Moxley squashes them. And Brian Cage is way more than that. And Lance Archer is too. I don't think those are their roles on the roster. So I'd like to see Brian Cage getting featured here. I think personally, I would like to see Gates of Agony in the tag division in AEW. And I'd like to see Brian Cage get a little bit more of the main event level push, because I think there's a lot there. I'm not saying beat MJF. I'm not saying that, but I think Brian Cage could be someone that has a lot of meaning on your roster, because he bridges the gap. Big guy that moves around. Like he's a guy who's very impressive if you give him a chance to do what he does in the ring.
Yeah, and if you look down his history of the matches he's had in AEW, he came in strong, man. He came in that ladder match as the mystery guy. He broke the ladder apart. He had a title match at one point. Like, this is a guy who had some steam behind him. I think he suffers a little bit in his character work and promos sometimes, but every now and then he'll surprise you and he'll pull something out and you'll be like, okay, if this was you all the time, like you said, sky's the limit. But with 2 hours of ROH, 2 hours of Collision, 2 hours of Dynamite, there's got to be a way for this guy to elevate even more so than he is right now.
Speaking of elevating someone, and this was happenstance because of injuries, we had the ROH TV Championship on the line. Samoa Joe defending against Dalton Castle. Match was okay. It wasn't the best match. Of course, the story is Samoa Joe and Stokely Hathaway forming this like allegiance outside of being intimidated. It looks like Hathaway is going to be siding with Joe, which definitely has me interested. Dalton Castle, man, like that. This dude is pro wrestling personified. I understand. Like I'm pretty sure when Hawk was first introduced him during the build from ROH, it blew his mind. He cried, the peacock, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Dalton Castle is absolutely awesome. And he might be the most well-defined character in all of pro wrestling. Like this dude, everything he does from movement to stepping in and out of the ring, everything he does is calculated in the world that Dalton Castle is built around him. And that's the biggest compliment you can give a pro wrestler. Everything is in cohesion to the character. And kudos to him. I think there is way more they can be doing with him, whether it's AEW or ROH. Dalton Castle needs to be tapped into. He needs to be on your screen. I want to see him on AEW. Former ROH world champion. I understand the lineage, but goddamn, this guy is perfect for national TV.
The crowd loves him. I mean, the crowd loves this guy, just the pomp and circumstance of his entrance and the character work. He really reminds me of, like you said, the total package and everything as far as committing to this gimmick and this character. He reminds me of Orange Cassidy, because I think Orange Cassidy is one of the more over living the gimmick guys in pro wrestling right now when it comes to just taking a kind of a ridiculous gimmick and bringing authenticity to it and making people buy in. Castle's right there with Orange Cassidy for me. He's on a smaller stage, but if you had him doing his same shtick on Monday Night Raw or Dynamite, he would be elevated. Crowds would definitely get behind him. He's just at he's on a streaming service. He's on Honor Club, which, the hardcore wrestling fans know this guy inside and out from his history with ROH. But if he had a bigger stage, I'm telling you, he would be one of the more popular wrestlers in pro wrestling.
Oh yeah. And maybe down the line, Tony Khan will feel generous and buy the rights to Queen's Radio Gaga, because I love even like the play on that song. Cause sometimes we've heard Jim Johnson make songs and Jimmy Hart did the same thing on WCW. Like the DDP song was in spirit of the Nirvana. It Smells Like Teen Spirit.
Right.
But I can't imagine if like Radio Gaga actually hits and you hear the vocals of Freddie Mercury with this dude coming out.
Unreal.
It's just unreal, man. We also had the ROH World Tag Team Championship on the line in a 4-way match. Dude, great match. And the surprise on the build up to the show, it happened in between our last show. We heard about Mark Davis being cleared from this really devastating injury that we covered here on the news. And Tony Khan was generous enough to cover his surgery. He came back way sooner. and rewarded for it. Aussie Open are now sitting here as the ROH Tag Team Champions after defeating the Lucha Brothers, the defending champs, Best Friends, the Kingdom, in a chaos match in the tag division. This was just a highlight where the Lucha Brothers and Best Friends, we kind of a theme on this card, showing different aggressive sides of themselves. We're not used to seeing Best Friends getting aggressive like this. Teasing of a rekindling of their feud too. So a little subplot we had going on. And then Aussie Open, I mean, anywhere I can speak about Kyle Davis and Kyle Fletcher and Mark Davis, I've been just absolutely floored by how amazing they are. New Japan Pro Wrestling wanted to sign them to a long-term deal. They decided to look elsewhere. Of course, they'll have their chance to go back to do their thing there with this open door between AEW and New Japan. But winning the titles as the first tag match as contracted members of the company is awesome to see. They got signed. People forget when Mark Davis got hurt, they were all elite after that.
Right.
And Kyle Fletcher had a cool run by himself as singles, but they're one of the best teams in the world. And they had that great match at FTR at the end of last year or early this year. And they continue to impress. And I'm excited to see what they do with these tag team championships, because sky's the limit for these dudes. These are, I mean, one of the best tag teams in the world.
Yeah, I thought this was a great matchup of teams too for a four-way, because, the Kingdom are ROH legends, essentially. Yep. Tons of history with those two guys. Best Friends are one of the most underappreciated, hardworking tag teams in the Tony Khan regime. I mean, these guys call their number and they're there for you. So they're always there to put on good matches. I enjoy both Chuck and Trent. I think they're underrated, workmanlike. They show up, they put their working boots on, and they always deliver. I thought it was a smart decision to take the titles off the Lucha Brothers. That frees them up. Hopefully they go back to AEW and start mixing it up in that tag division again. They are former champions. I wouldn't be opposed to seeing a little bit of a feud with them and FTR. Like, we've never got a really deep story with those two teams. And Aussie Open's like sneaky with everything. We didn't know the extent of the injury as far as how much time. I thought he was going to be out longer than he is. They show up. They win the titles. We thought when they signed with AEW, it was sneaky. It came out of nowhere. We weren't expecting that. We thought the contract situation was kind of like no one really had it pinned down, but we all thought they were like locked in with New Japan. Come to find out, they were happy there. They were just seeking like a long-term deal with a company. They were tired of these one-shot offers. They wanted that steady flow of income. New Japan wasn't willing to put the ink to paper, and Tony Khan was. So AEW fans kind of reaped the benefit of that. And like you said, with the Forbidden Door, we'll see them still playing in Japan and doing that. But I thought this was a good move to kind of your new team. You're throwing ROH titles on it. Hopefully they're a little more active in Ring of Honor than Lucha Brothers were, because I don't think they didn't defend that title enough.
I think 3 times. I think they defended it on the Battle of the Belts against QT and Hobbs, and then
right.
they think they defended them one more time, and then this is the 3rd time, and they lost them.
So hopefully we get them a little more active, especially with Mark coming back, because he's got to knock off that ring rust. So you want to, coming off that injury, not only for the physical side of it, but for the mental side of it. You got to shake that. Anytime you suffer an injury, I believe, was it a knee injury?
Yeah.
So anytime you got that, you got to test it to get your confidence back. And I thought he looked good in this tag match, but there's still going to be that little voice in the back of your mind, like, oh shit, if something goes wrong. The more you work, the less that the loudness of that voice will keep going down. And I think we'll see them work a little more. I think Tony knows, like, he's got to get back in the groove of things. And the only way to do that's get in the ring and go bell to bell.
Yeah, and I think before Davis got hurt, they were on the cusp of doing what FTR did in 2022. This could have been their year. They were going off and having these ridiculous matches all across every promotion. They were crushing it. And we got a little taste of what they can do in AEW in the 6-man. I think in the build-up to Forbidden Door 2022, we got them teaming with Ospreay. So we saw them here, and then we saw them on our screens in inconsistent manner. And then they were crushing it on ROH TV on a weekly basis. I know that because Colton and I were covering it extensively. They were the highlight of the weeks, and then seeing them get hurt, it's like, damn. But now they can pick up where they left off, and sooner than I anticipated. And good to see he's back. It looked like there was no limitations on him at all. He was doing what he usually does. Of course, you can kind of hide a little bit in a 4-way, but it seems like he was as active. He was jumping around. There was no hesitation about that knee at all. So it was good to see, and happy to see him back. Great additions on whatever promotion they decide to use him. And I'm sure we'll see them down the line on AEW television, especially on the build to maybe All In. We're going to be seeing them as well. So I would love to see them be featured in a big way because, we know Ospreay will be as well. So United Empire back together. We also had the Pure Championship match. Shibata defended against Daniel Garcia. Shibata getting the win. Pure Championship matches are very niche, but I love the story, and especially seeing this feud grow over time. Daniel Garcia, if you use a barometer as the ROH pay-per-views and looking at how Daniel Garcia has grown as a competitor, just his character work and how far defined. We talk about Dalton Castle being this well-rounded character. Daniel Garcia, when he first came in on our screens, in our psyche, everyone knew what he was doing in PWG when he won Bola the year before, and we all were familiar with how great he was. He was being heralded as the future Bryan Danielson. It's going to be an amazing addition to the roster. And then when he was kind of teasing between BCC, it seemed like a layup. He'd be in BCC, and maybe the JAS is not for him. I got to say, man, the JAS piece of him has made him stand out in such a great way. Him being defiant of being the entertainer in the face of the most hardcore technical wrestler ever to step foot in a Japanese ring or American ring. He is the wrestler. For him to be acting that way, doing the dance he does with the arms up in the air and gyrating his hips. At 25 years old, Daniel Garcia is quickly approaching the most valuable level, type of guy. Like, it's unreal to think about what he's accomplished in this short period of time. And really, it just shows when you give back, and we talk about Bryan Danielson and Jericho really kind of giving this guy in the eyes of the casual fan and even the diehards, make him feel important. He's benefited, and he's taking and running with it. The future is so goddamn bright for Daniel Garcia at 25 years old. He's not even 30, and he's out there in main event level type of matches, feeling like a big star. Yeah, he took the loss. Who cares, though? He came out smelling like roses, in my opinion.
Oh, man. Go back and look at his history, man. He's main evented quite a few Dynamites. And when you have Danielson penciling you in as a guy he must work with, when you have Jericho penciling you in to be in a faction, legends see something in this kid. And I think a lot of fans do too. But if you're one of the naysayers who's like, who is this guy? Dude, you need to take notice of Daniel Garcia, because I'm with you, Ace. I think he's a prodigy in the making. I think 10 years from now, the character work and the type of stuff he's doing, who knows where he's going to be at, because match quality, the kid has it in spades. He is definitely cut from the Danielson old school cloth. And I think the choice of putting him with Jericho at the time, like you said, when everything was kind of shaking out with JAS and BCC, a lot of people thought not only Wheeler Yuta, but Garcia were tailor-made for Blackpool Combat Club. But now looking back on it, it means so much more that those guys went with who they went with. I think Yuta going with BCC, he needed that edge. He needed to get a little bit of that, cupcake quality off of him. He had the skill, but he didn't have that attitude in his character. Now he has it. And with Garcia, he seemed void of character, and Jericho's really brought out some personality in the kid. And I love the personality. I love the dance. The crowd's getting behind the dance. We saw that 2-minute dance off on Dynamite recently. But the thing that I love, man, when he's in a match with Shibata and there's a stare down between those guys, there's no fun in games. I mean, Garcia is legit. He looks like a stone cold killer in stare downs. He doesn't play around. And for my money, he's one of the more entertaining guys in matches right now. As far as if you're looking just at skill for skill, foundational pro wrestling, I love Garcia. And Shibata's a legend.
100%. And the build of, you're right, comparing him to Wheeler Yuta, I think they're going to be interchangeably connected for the rest of history because of what the decision made and when they were brought in. And for good reason. These two are tied together, and I would love to see the two of them featured in a main event sometime down the line where you can look back and be like, man, the growth and the company AEW created these two big stars, and they have the opportunity to do that with the two of them, all because of the people around them willing to do business. And that changes the mindset of what wrestling used to be, where everyone's so protective of their spot. And you hear the stories of like Hogan and Nash and whoever holding onto their spot. And that was just the culture then. Now it's this evergreen type of philosophy where they want to create the best possible star, where, Bryan Danielson's tapping out in the middle of the ring to Daniel Garcia. And he doesn't have to do that, but he does. And we're reaping the benefits of that. We're now having him in a match with Shibata, which, forgetting everything with Shibata, this is house money, because Shibata wasn't even supposed to step foot in the ring. The guy may not even be on this earth anymore because of the injury he had with the brain bleed. The fact that he's back in the ring and we're getting him consistently on ROH programming as a champion, it's like, we can't lose sight of that. That's what we can't lose sight of when we're watching Shibata compete and giving back again to Daniel Garcia. Yeah, in a losing effort, but Garcia, again, every time he touches Shibata in that ring, he's better for it. So,
and man, something with me, like in Shibata, I know everyone talks about Okada and Tanahashi and the aura around these guys, and I get it. Like they definitely, you feel the mystique of those guys, but there's something about Shibata. He has a mystique to me that transcends even Okada for me. Like when he's standing there is this like, he just looks like a bad motherfucker in my opinion. Like I do not want to mess with this dude. I don't know what it is. Okada has the allure. I get it. It's Okada, but Shibata, there's something about him that I feel like even those guys don't have. There's this mystique there. I don't know if it's his face, like the way he looks, kind of that stoic nature. He reminds me of Fedor Emelianenko from Pride back in the early old school days, where no fear, no intimidation factor. It's just this blank slate of I'm here to do my job, and anyone standing in my way, I will destroy. It's like it's a cold, icy lack of emotion that just pulls me in with Shibata.
Oh yeah, Shibata is absolutely epic. And we also had another epic contest in front of us for the ROH World Championship. And believe it or not, this did not main event. We had a bill of 2 world title matches, and they did not disappoint with either one of them, where this one went on prior, and it was Claudio Castagnoli taking on Pac. And this was kind of the third choice. Eddie Kingston was the story built in. Then they did Mark Briscoe, where they were going to have Mark Briscoe take on Claudio. He got hurt. They built this up in blood and guts at the maximum amount of time they could. Wednesday, and then Friday, we had 2 days. And as far as in-ring, bell to bell, this will really age pretty well as far as match quality goes. And it has me thinking about with history, and if you can find a way to build this long form, and this has some legs here with Pac and Claudio, and where the other thing that kind of took away from the match, but also added at the same time, was the lack of defined roles of who's a babyface, who's a heel, because both these guys are on paper heels. They were both on the heel side of Blood and Guts with the BCC. Hard hitting match. Anything you can think about. These two guys, the utmost professional. Pac is so smooth. He seems like he's missed not one beat since he's been hurt and coming back. High level competitors at the top of their game. Great match. Claudio retains the championship. Should definitely go out of your way to check this match out. If not for anything, just the in-ring work. It's a class instructor based on how to work a match. Really on no build, and they made people care about it, which was cool. 2
of the best professionals, like these guys, they're just the best to do it as far as workers. And good match. I don't think you should fault the match for the lack of build here. I know we've said ROH is short on story, but here they were working in a tight spot. Like you said, Eddie Kingston is the built-in story. He goes off to do G1. Hats off to Tony Khan for not pulling a promoter, forcing him to come back. Like he agreed to let Eddie live his dream and enter the G1, and he didn't disrupt that. He let him stay in Japan. He could have easily pulled him, and that would have been an asshole move, but he's got partners in New Japan. He's not going to want to upset them. He's not going to want to upset Eddie. So he Mark Briscoe's there. The injury, pretty late notice that happens. Tony's got to scramble. He shoots an angle at the end of Blood and Guts to kind of make this make somewhat of sense.
Right.
I thought that was like, that's a pivot move, man. Sometimes things happen and a promoter has to pivot. If I wonder how, if Mark Briscoe would not have gotten hurt, or if there would have been a better option for this match at Death Before Dishonor, I wonder how Blood and Guts would have kind of ended, because that was really the button of the match. The button of the match was Pac and Claudio getting into it, and then Don leaving with Takeshita. So that played heavily at the end of Blood and Guts, but it was, when they shot that angle, I'm like, here's Tony's decision for Death Before Dishonor. Here we go. This is who it's going to be. It was kind of telegraphed if you're tapped into that thing, but all that aside, sometimes you have to pivot. Sometimes injuries and things of that nature force you to add things to your creative, take things from your creative, make things make sense. And Tony's got a big juggling job where he's handling not only stories on Dynamite and Collision, but he's building ROH storylines. So when you've got a guy like Claudio, who's your champion, who's also on Dynamite, here you go. You got to shoot this angle. So I thought it was like good on Tony for pivoting. You're in a tight spot. The match delivered. You put these two guys in a match. I think we expect that.
Oh, absolutely. And they build a second world title match as the main event. And you can make the argument that it's like for marketing purposes, or they're trying to get good grace with the women's division, trying to make people, man, I tell you right now, this match that Willow and Athena had for the women's world championship could be up as a match of the year. And I think everyone's against the 8 ball right now with Ospreay and Omega, the two of those matches. But as far as matches of the year, this rival to me, and people might say I'm crazy, but I thought this was up there at Flair and Ripley from WrestleMania. I thought this
100%
match had big match feel. And I love really at the climax of the match, the shout outs of all the spots and the moves for all the women that paved the way in the original ROH Women of Honor division. Man, this was a fantastic, tremendous main event that outshined any reasonable expectation you had about it, because it had no right being as good as it was. These two women went out there and worked very hard. And you think about the butterfly effect. Willow Nightingale shouldn't be in this spot. Like, it kind of all happened by happenstance and piecemeal, and all of a sudden figuring out she won the Owen Hart tournament. She won the New Japan Strong Championship, and all these pieces have fallen into place. And AEW, ROH, they have this future pillared like star on their hands, Willow Nightingale. And she showed up. She's risen to the occasion against Athena. And honestly, I've been very complimentary about Athena's run. She's been one of the best booked champions, women or otherwise, across all promotions. She's been dominant. She was highlights of the ROH TV show on a weekly basis. For a lack of a build, all told, this whole show, you could put it against any ROH pay-per-view. And I think that's funny that we sat here and we were very critical about the build. And I think rightfully so. I think Tony Khan was critical in the build. And we don't know how, a lot of times, in a bakery, you don't know how the cake is being made, and you don't know the stuff they had to overcome to get it to look the way it did. But you take this 4 years from now, when you don't have to even care about the build, and you put it up against, and you want to do a rewatch, you could put all these matches up against any card, top to bottom of this year. And I think it stands up. And I think we're going to look very favorably at Athena and Willow Nightingale, as this might be the match people circle as being like, Willow Nightingale kind of was made on this night in a losing effort again, which was, don't forget, Stone Cold was made in a losing effort too.
Oh no, you're right. And I think I'm totally in agreement. This match rivals Flair and Ripley from WrestleMania. That was a phenomenal match. I thought that was the match of Mania. Honestly, like, that was my favorite match of Mania.
Yeah.
Not a lot of build there either in story. I thought, like, they just came out and bell to bell tore it down. And it's a shame that people hearing us say this is on that level. I think there's probably a lot of people that would roll their eyes at that, because the scope of ROH to them isn't as elevated as obviously WrestleMania. So how could anything top? Dude, go watch this match. This is top 3 women's wrestling match of the year.
Yep.
At least, and I'm with you. I think Athena is crushing it. I think she's one of the best women right now. I love the attitude. Like, if someone would have told me that Ember Moon would be the long reigning ROH women's champion and she would have the kind of the demeanor she has and the attitude and the character work she has right now, I'd probably call you a liar because I just couldn't see it with Ember Moon. But man, she is showcasing, you know, she comes out of Booker T's training camp. She's showing that she's as legit as it comes. And selfishly, I know she's kind of the stalwart of Ring of Honor right now, but selfishly for me, I'm like, where is this on our AEW TV? Bring
100%.
Athena over, dude. Like,
or even this match quality. When was the last time we
Right.
saw an AEW women's match like this? The one we just saw.
Right. Like, it's like you're Tony, you've got this under your banner. You're putting on banger women's matches in Ring of Honor, like Trisha Dora on the come up. Like, you have young talent over there. We need to see some of this on our AEW television. It's Athena's doing some of the best work, and I feel like fans from a broader sense aren't getting to see this because, you know, it's locked away on a streaming service that maybe some fans aren't paying for. And I feel bad for those fans, and I feel bad for Athena that, you know, she's doing great work, but she's not getting the respect of a Rhea Flair match because it's not being seen. You know, the whole, if a tree falls in the woods, does it make a sound? Like, this should be talked about. That's how good this match was. And for all the, I know a lot of people are mixed on Willow. Like, Willow is more than just the smile, wave, Bailey hugger type of gimmick, man. You guys are selling Willow Nightingale short. If you think she's just Bailey hugger 2.0, this girl can go.
Yeah.
Like, and I like her character work. I think her character, the fact that she has that bubbly personality, but when it comes down to it, she gets mean in there. She gets legit and she's entertaining. And I think that bubbly personality mixed with Athena's mean streak was a perfect setup from just character versus character. But this match over delivered. I thought it was phenomenal.
Yeah, and if you also look at just the way the crowd reacted, they were absolutely like riveted during this match, which added to the atmosphere.
They were in it.
So in it. And this was the end of a night of a decently long pay-per-view. Everyone complains about how long the pay-per-view is, and you know, the crowd gets tired. This crowd was in this match, and this was deserving of the main event slot. And I give them credit for having the courage to put it there. And like I said, I think this would be Willow Nightingale's coming out party as far as the casual fan. If anyone sees this match and you want kind of a quick catch up on why she's being built as strong as she is in AEW, giving accolades like the Owen Hart Cup tournament, and she's a future AEW Women's Champion, they'd be silly not to have that title on her soon, because if she's able to put this match on with Athena, I would like to see this on the AEW side of things. We have not gotten a match like this on AEW television or AEW pay-per-view for women in a while. It's been a long while since we had that. So I would love to see the championship around that type of work rate, because this was great. Felt so important.
And honestly, man, like, I know we're really hard on AEW's women's division right now. The lack of like spotlight they're getting, the lack of storylines and really compelling feuds they're getting. But even with that being said and all the negatives being said, I think Toni Storm's character work right now as a heel is really well done. Like, she's just not getting a lot of time to showcase it, but she's in that character. I'm totally bought in. Huge Toni Storm fan. Some of the best work she's doing, even in the ring, like those matches she had with Jamie Hayter were great. I know they're both heels right now. Give me Athena, Toni Storm. I just think that would be a barn burner. Like, if you gave those women 20 minutes and said, go show out, I feel like you're going to get something special.
Absolutely. And I'm feeling very optimistic about what the future of AEW's women division looks like. Cause you mentioned before the underswell of the positive movement that we're seeing on ROH. And you can look at guys, you know, women like Trisha Dora, you know, Lady Frost has been kind of building on the come up here. So
Billy Starks
as well. So I was very impressed with this, honestly, this card. And maybe, again, going back to what we originally said, maybe you go in with limited expectations and it blows your mind. But man, I can't poke a hole in this whole card. It was a fun watch on a Friday night that left me entertained and well worth the money. So I recommend checking out if you guys are willing to splurge for the replay, or at least check out some of the highlights of really the two main event matches are worth seeing alone.
Absolutely. Well worth the watch. If you're just a fan of great matches, this over delivered, a sleeper event. Definitely check it out if you can.
It was the same thing we said though about last year's Death Before Dishonor. There was a little bit more build to it, and I correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, it was one of those events where like it was before they even had weekly TV, so they just had to like piece it together on AEW television between Dynamite and Rampage, and they still walked away. We got the Briscoes and FTR on both those shows. Which,
I think that was the 2 out of 3 falls match with the Briscoes and FTR. So
yep. Well, with that being said, let's go to big story number 2 and talk about what else is going on in the world of wrestling.
Big story 2.
As mentioned before, we had last week Blood and Guts from Boston, the TD Garden. And the story was, we can talk about the match, we can break it down and all the things that went down. But the ending of this match, I mean, of course, leaves it open for maybe BCC and Elite to have this like moment of clarity where they're going to move their separate ways. And you could take what was said after, and this was off screen. And I know we have the clip to talk about it, but before we show it, a lot of times Kenny gets on the mic, and this was it was traditional in New Japan shows where he'd kind of bid the crowd adieu, for lack of a better term. That's exactly what he says. And he kind of waves them off. And that was a New Japan thing. It was the top guy would go out there and say a few words. Omega, and this happens on Dynamite too, it depends on who it is, but Kenny got on the mic, obviously, since he was in the main event and they were on the Victoria side and wanted to pay tribute that Coda was there, and it's a big moment for the Elite in general. But the thing that caught people's eye was, what he had said about the Bucks. And we don't exactly know, because the wrestling contracts are always kind of shrouded in this, like, they're coming up. We know MJF's date happens to be this date, or sometimes dates come up. People get released. We don't talk about it. It's not really public knowledge like it would be for baseball. You can see this guy was signed 4 years at whatever amount of money. But a lot of conversation has been kind of picked up here, and maybe much to do about it, nothing, but I think it's at least worth a conversation.
Yeah, I mean, people were claiming, should we play the clip of what Kenny said? Yeah, let's play the clip and then we'll kind of talk about it, because he kind of alluded to he's with the Bucks no matter where they go, which put some question marks in fans and journalists' minds. So here's a tiny little clip of what Kenny Omega said after the match.
See, we should get you ready to roll. As I am an active performer in professional wrestling, I'm going to go wherever these guys go.
So fan footage, so forgive the bad audio, but I think it was clear that he said, as long as I'm an active professional wrestler, I'm going to go where these guys go, and he's pointing at the Bucks. So that got everyone talking. What's that mean? Does that mean was that kind of contract negotiation, leverage talk, letting Tony know, hey, if you don't pay the Bucks, you're going to lose me too, and vice versa. I don't know, man. What do you think, Ace? Like, do you think there's any chance these 3 guys whose contracts all come up, and Hangman's contract might be coming up too? I'm not sure. I think there's a cloud of mystery on Hangman as well. Do you think there's any chance, any validation to these guys potentially hitting the road?
I always thought there would be some level of possibility, just out of sheer nature of curiosity on their end about what it would be like. But also you add in the X factor of this drama in the backstage, whether they're right or wrong, and they have to tiptoe and they have to create a separate show for somebody. And maybe in their mind, All Elite Wrestling is no longer the image of what they built it on and what they wanted it to be. And that's okay. I mean, we saw Cody leave as well, and Cody left to do different things. And we saw how Cody's presented on WWE side, which could be used as a feather in their cap. Like, I wonder how we be presented if we can come in with creative control and make sure we get sort of the same Cody treatment. And I think these guys are big enough stars where WWE would kind of bring the whole package, bring the Bucks as they are and bring Kenny Omega as they are. Do I think it's like a definite? No, I absolutely don't think it's a definite, but I think if there's stuff going on behind the scenes and they feel a certain type of way about management, Tony Khan specifically, and they feel like AEW is trending in a direction where it's not what they had built it in that vision, then it's very possible that they decide to take their ball and go elsewhere and attempt to, I think they are a package deal. They always have been, whether it be ROH or New Japan Pro Wrestling or wherever the tide might take them. I don't think it's out of the realm possibility that we would see them in WWE. It'd be hard to envision it, but I think Cody broke that like bubble for us. Like I can see really anyone breaking through at this point. And especially again, going back to the drama with Punk. And again, people can rip on the Bucks and say that they're being childish or whatever they want to say. Their contract is up and they can decide to go elsewhere where maybe there's not as a volatile situation that could be handled a little bit differently in a different company that has a little more track record of doing these things.
Yeah. Man, my mind goes so many different places when I think about this because like you said, they can go wherever they want. Contracts up. Maybe there's backstage heat. Maybe, like you said, they don't look at AEW as the company they sought out to make. They look at Cody. Oh man, could we get that treatment? Could we have creative freedom a little bit over there? Would they bring us in as big stars? Would they bury us? All these questions. Could they leave? Absolutely. Like anything is possible in pro wrestling. We've been shown that time and time again. Do I personally think they're going to leave? I don't. Just the way they've kind of been teasing at it on being the elite too. It just seems like this seems like the Bucks messing with the fans. And to be quite honest, I don't think there was anything behind that clip. I think fans looked a little deeper into that. I think Kenny was just like, I love these guys. Wherever they go, I'm going to go. I don't think he meant when he said that. I don't think he was meaning whatever promotion they go to, I'm going to go. I looked at it when I heard it. I thought it was just more of like, we just went into uncharted violent territory in blood and guts. Whatever fire they walk through, I'm going to be there with them. Kind of like almost still a little bit. I didn't see that as a contract thing. People did look deeper. I get that. But having said that, I don't think they're going to leave, but they could leave. I necessarily wouldn't be opposed to them leaving. Like if they left, wrestling is built on these monumental holy shit moments. I don't think them leaving would cripple AEW. I do think it would hurt AEW because I think Cody leaving hurt AEW a little bit, especially with him leaving and then Brawl Out happening. It became like kind of this chain reaction of negativity towards the company. I think they're coming out of that, obviously. But I don't think the Bucks and Kenny Omega are going to be used on the level of what Cody is being used on. They might be used well, but they're not going to be used to that degree. I just don't think they are. Cody had history with WWE. They looked at him as a WWE product who is returning. These guys don't have that history. Everything was made outside of that company, and now they're coming in. I do think they would get a huge push because the fans would dictate it. The fans would want that push, but ultimately they're not going to have the control that they have in AEW, which I think could sour them on the idea of leaving. But just go with me here on a little fantasy booking. Say they leave. I think a lot of fans, not everyone, but there is a kind of growing groundswell of people who want to see the elite do other things outside of just always work together. I think we've got 4 years of that in AEW with them always orbiting each other in storyline. There is fans out there that want to see fresh stuff for the elite. If they leave and they go to WWE for, say, 3 to 5 year deal, we've yet to see the big returns to AEW. The guys that have made a name in AEW left and then came back. If you get a situation, I'm not a conspiracy nut. I'm not Tom. I'm not building some Alex Jones conspiracy thread here. But if the elite were to leave and say they sign a 3-year deal and say for whatever reason, Cody's deal ending and their deal ending in WWE come up at the same time, 3-4 years go by, and then they return to AEW together as this unit, Cody, Bucks, Omega, that'd be one of the biggest stories in pro wrestling. Is it going to happen? No. Hell no. It's conspiracy 101. But like, I'm not opposed to people leaving companies. You are just like me, Ace. We grew up in a time where talent jumping ship and making those big debuts and then leaving and returning to their former companies, that's kind of par and parcel for pro wrestling. So I'm not against anyone jumping ship. I just don't think it's going to happen.
So 2 parts. I think Kenny Omega's roadmap, you could probably look at AJ Styles' as best case scenario about how he'd be presented. And I think that's likely. I think they're probably similar as far as presentation to the WWE audience, and they would do the same thing. And, you know, we saw how AJ was brought in. He was made WWE champion pretty quickly. He beat John Cena. Like, he had a really good feud with everybody involved with that. And we see AJ Styles has fizzled out at this point. Like, he's sort of doing the Shinsuke Nakamura thing where you're on the roster.
It's sad what AJ's doing right now.
Exactly.
Me.
So every once in a while they'll heat him up, they'll microwave him and get him back to the top of the card, but it never has the luster it used to have. It feels like we're wasting the last of his years. As far as just AEW and like leaving, I agree. Like leaving a territory, it's the best thing to do for resurgence of everybody around it. And it's good to shake things up. It's good to have people in a different direction. And the big difference here, and it doesn't mean it can't happen, is AEW was started by these guys. And like when you remove them from the equation, eventually it was going to happen. Like eventually there's going to be a world where AEW, hopefully if things continue to go the way they go, and what they expected was the elite wouldn't always be a part of it. It's just a challenging thing. And looking at just the perception of from the outside looking in, of course we're not on the inside and we can't see the drama. And I'm sure it's hard because of everything they're trying to manage. And I think at this point we can look at Collision and Dynamite, like things are going pretty well. We're not reading about the stuff that has been going on. But again, I go back to if AEW is no longer in the vision of this wrestling utopia that they intended on creating, right, wrong, or indifferent, maybe they're just like, I want out, and they don't want to tiptoe around. Maybe they just don't want to work with Punk, and that people can have their own opinions on that. But they also maybe it's perfect timing for them, where they're just like, I don't want to be a part of this company that's skewing towards a different direction. And Tony Khan has shown he's going to put his eggs in whatever basket is going to make him the most money. And maybe that's Punk. Maybe he feels like Punk is going to make him the most money. And short-lived as it might be, because I don't think Punk is long as far. But neither are the Bucks and Omega. So you're making a decision on either side. Invest in the future and invest in the current product, which is maybe he views like CM Punk. And if it's one or the other, maybe it's a mutual split where they say, all right, you made your choice, no hard feelings. Maybe we'll come back down the line. And it is hard to think about, though, in AEW without the E. You know what I mean? Like there would be no elite. So, but it is a conversation worth having. But I would say, going back to the original clip, this didn't change my mind. I've always felt this way. The clip was just more fodder to bring it back to the surface.
Yeah, it's hard for me to see an AEW without the Bucks, especially like Omega. Yeah, because he's buddies with the Bucks and he's been there, but he hasn't been there as long as the Bucks. I feel like the Bucks were the first. I believe Matt Jackson was the first person to take a call with Tony Khan, even before Cody Rhodes. I believe Matt Jackson was the person that Tony Khan reached out to, I believe, if I have my history correct. And he reached out to Cody and said, hey, you should listen. You should talk to this guy. Matt Jackson's wife's tied in. There is something about, obviously we say they're EVPs. But on the other end of that, maybe they don't want to be EVPs anymore. Cody said the same thing. Like, I just wanted to be a wrestler. I was tired of doing the office stuff. But I don't think that plays a big part in it. When you're in contract negotiations, you could step down from that title and just focus on pro wrestling. But I do think there is something to this whole revolution. They started something. They made pro wrestling a better place. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but I've heard so many wrestlers peripherally not involved in that brawl out say that the press has kind of built in the minds of fans this backstage turmoil that is bigger on the page than it is in real life. Like, it reads like it's this place and it's divided. I've heard that's really overstated. but also those are guys not involved directly in the brawl out. So who knows? But for me, it is like anything can happen. But even with Omega saying that after Blood and Guts, it still doesn't change my opinion. I'm not saying it won't happen, but I will have to see it to believe it of the Bucks and Omega leaving. I still think Tony Khan really leans on these guys for this company's identity. It wouldn't hurt the company total. It wouldn't end the company. But if you don't think the Elite not being involved in AEW, that's a huge hit. That's a huge, huge hit. It's not going to cripple them completely, but a lot of your history has revolved around that. And for WWE to snipe essentially the four founders of your company outside of the money man, Tony Khan, Omega, Bucks, Cody, those were your beginning guys. Those were your EVPs. And if WWE scooped all of them up, the fans would look at it and feel about it a certain way. So I don't know, man. I don't know if it's worth letting them go. If I'm Tony Khan, I'm opening up my checkbook on optics alone, on just public optics of losing them. I'm opening that checkbook.
Yeah, and if you look at the history of wrestling, and obviously this person was not a founder of WWF, but Hulk Hogan was essential in the start in 1985, and it wasn't long until 94 he was in WCW. So it's not like it's impossible.
It can happen.
The trio of the Elite could be all of a sudden. I mean, Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan were they were inseparable as far as the identity of WWF, and Hogan was gone, and the ship continued to move. And I think it's more of a compliment on the promotion that's built a strong foundation where you can move past it and anybody can leave and the ship keeps on the ocean.
That's true. Nobody. I mean, that's a great point, man. If Hogan can leave WWE, but my only difference to then, I feel like, I know we got the Hollywood Hogan run and everything, which really revitalized him. But I feel like Hogan was a little more longer in the tooth than these guys. Like I know Omega has some wear and tear on his body, and they're no spring chickens. They're not what they used to be. But I do feel like there's a lot more road ahead for them than what Hogan had at that time.
Yeah, I mean, you can make the argument. I think what Hogan was probably done when WCW was done, and then he came back and did his own stuff. But as far as
I'm not even talking like road wear or body. I'm talking more in the gimmick was played out. Like True. He was starting to get booed in 95 in WCW. Hulkamania, people were, times had changed, not just in the wrestling world, but socially. Like we were tired of eating our vitamins. We were tired of saying our prayers. We wanted somebody coming out and strumming the big gold to Jimi Hendrix, and they gave that to us. I don't know if the Bucks and Omega, I don't know if people are tired on their gimmicks as much as tired of the storylines they're in. It's, you know what I mean? Like we're wanting something new.
I agree. And if booked correctly, the three of those guys coming in, I think they're well known to even the WWE casuals. That could be very substantial as
very true.
History repeats itself. Maybe an outsider gimmick for the three of those guys. And all of a sudden they have their own version of an outsider type of gimmick.
Tony's got to be careful because, Bloodline's hot right now. Judgment Day's hot. If you get the Elite coming in to WWE with an outsider gimmick, that shit could catch fire. And then here's AEW watching WWE just get more popular and more popular while they're left holding the bag and being like, oh shit, there they go.
Omega Reigns and the Usos Young Bucks are, that's a conversation that we could be having a year from now. So
that's a dream scenario.
But let's get to our big story number 3 about another dream scenario.
Big story 3.
Man, we got Dirty Dom joining the ranks of holding championship belts with Judgment Day. We got Damian Priest with the Money in the Bank. Rhea Ripley's obviously our women's world champion. Now Dom, man, he pinned Wes Lee on NXT on Tuesday for a shocking finish. Finn Balor was responsible for distracting the ref. Damian Priest attempted to lay out Lee with the North American Championship. Lee dodged. He walked into Rhea Ripley, who smashed Lee with the women's belt. Mysterio fell on top of him to a huge, enormous booze. He ended the show standing tall with Judgment Day all holding their titles up aside from Finn Balor. And we're going to be getting another first title defense here on Great American Bash, July 30th. Wesley and Mustafa Ali was supposed to happen, but now it's going to be Dominik Mysterio versus Mustafa Ali. So to kind of eulogize Wesley's run, and I think people are comparing Orange Cassidy's run as international champion is very similar, a work rate type of champion. 269 days. He won it all the way back in Halloween Havoc, October 22nd in a ladder match. If you guys remember, Solo Sikoa vacated that title when he got called up to the match. Called up to the Bloodline storyline. And here we are. Dom's the champion. I think this is a good buzz for NXT. It has me at least thinking of watching on Tuesday nights. And for future reference, if a guy comes over from the main roster and challenges for a title, there is now precedent set that they could win.
Yeah, I thought this was genius booking for them. When I saw this, the first thing that popped in my head was the quote of Triple H saying, "It's a marathon, not a sprint," when NXT was going head to head with AEW Dynamite on Wednesday nights and they were getting trounced. And he was like, "Hey, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Congratulations." They released the presser congratulating Dynamite. Maybe there's something to that. I think the ratings topped out at 844,000 people watching Dom win gold on NXT. 844. I think it leveled out overall. Like it was in the 700s for the show total, but that segment got 844. That's right in striking distance for Dynamite. I know they're not on the same night anymore, but that's a great rating for NXT. And I think we're seeing them do that a lot to get buzz around the brand. I think Nick Khan had came out and said that we're looking at NXT as a third brand now. It's no longer we're not taking it as developmental. They flip-flop on that shit. When the ratings are low, it's developmental. When the ratings are surging, it's a third brand. So who knows what they really view this company at. But when you have Seth Rollins coming and going one-on-one with Braun Breaker, you have Dom and Judgment Day showing up, winning a title. They've sent Baron Corbin back there. Mustafa Ali's there. Like, they're injecting some main event attention, main event prestige, or main roster, I should say, main roster attention, main roster prestige into their 2 hours of NXT. And honestly, another way this was a genius move to me is like, this is a way for Dom to get ring time defending this title against other guys, to really tighten up his skill as a singles competitor and not have the attention of Raw and SmackDown and the eyes that are on you when you're on the main roster. He can kind of go there, button up his work, improve under a smaller crowd. I thought this was genius all around. I think it gets people more interested in the brand. I'll be honest, I don't watch NXT. I watch the highlights. I keep up on what's going on. But as far as like destination viewing on Tuesday night at 8 p.m., I am not sitting in front of my TV watching NXT. But when you do something like this, there's people like me that it might pique their interest to actually at least DVR it, and check it out. So I thought from a business perspective, it was great. I think from a storytelling perspective for Dom, it was great because now you have Judgment Day. Dom's carrying this North American title on the main roster, which gets fans going, what's that title? Oh, that's an NXT title? He's on there? You're going to pull more fans into your show. Plus, it's going to elevate Judgment Day on the main roster where, like you said, Rhea's holding gold, Dom's holding gold, Damien's holding a briefcase. Where's Finn fitting this? Is he going to get gold from Seth Rollins, or is that going to be a linchpin to drive him out of Judgment Day, where they're looking at, hey man, we've got all these trophies, you don't have one. What's going on? You're the weak link. So there's a lot of like cool storytelling here. I think it's a home run from every perspective. Booking, business, everything. I thought this was a brilliant move.
Yeah, and Dom is an example of what WWE's been doing lately very well, and that's creating new stars. And I think
Mhm.
Dom is someone who in-house could have been, viewed as a failure from the beginning, where it was just he was a second generation wrestler that was not getting over the fans. They were trying their best to make him in the image of Ray, and they win the titles on Father's Day, that whole thing. But what they're doing really well, and give them a lot of credit because we were very critical on them even a few years back that they had the inability to create new stars that mean something. And you mentioned before they popped a rating on NXT, and they really didn't bring anyone there that would have been, breaking the bank as far as the main roster. I know they
Right.
brought Seth Rollins there for the title defense, but that was more for the world heavyweight title, not much for NXT. For Dom to come over there and drive a rating speaks volumes about what Judgment Day is doing for him, what Raw has been doing as far as creating an undercard that isn't just based in the main event. And even though Dom continues to take losses, whether it be on pay-per-view or on Raw, he's resonating with the fans. And this is like they're doing something really well with getting people to care about Dom Mysterio, the character, more so than they have in the past about many undercard stories. The roster is as well rounded as it's been in any year that I can remember in the recent history. Dom is sitting there as a shining example of when you put some time and investment outside of just championship programs, a guy like Dom can rise to the top. And given the right sort of creative, all of a sudden we have a character that's really well-rounded. We talk about Dalton Castle on Ring of Honor. All of a sudden Dom sitting there is this really well-rounded, just well thought out character that is just thriving in a faction with Finn Balor is a main eventer, Rhea Ripley is certainly a main eventer, and Damian Priest, you can make the argument. I think they're trying to, but he's getting the rub off all those guys, and I think it's beautifully done.
No, this is a textbook build on a guy who the fans had given up on. There was fans calling for them to cut Dom. There was fans calling on them to send Dom back to NXT, take him off our TV. He's not good. He's pudgy. He's not even in shape. He had so much criticism coming at him, and it almost seemed like somebody in creative, I don't know if it's Triple H, I don't know who it is, but somebody took all of that and was like, oh yeah, I'm going to show you what we can do with this kid. And the turn, I believe it was at I believe it was Clash at the Castle.
Yep.
When Dom turned on Ray, and from that moment, it's been textbook how you build someone. And the kid, all the debating right now is Dom or Don, who gets more heat. Dom's in that conversation, and this is a guy a lot of people were out on. And just to go back to my earlier point, I think he's been matched up in a lot of, not all the time tag matches, because he had I thought, a phenomenal match with his dad at Mania. He had the match with Cody, but a lot of these matches have kind of been designed to protect him, where it's not all on his shoulders from a bell-to-bell standpoint. And I love the decision to put a title where he's going to have, it's a workhorse title in NXT, where he's going to have to go there and put on matches. And I think it's going to sharpen his game. So not only booking, business, but also building, the 3 B's for Dom: booking, business, and building character, and building in-ring support. I think this is just all around, all positives for this decision. And Tony Khan, man, you gotta, I love stuff like this, because this is like, step up, man, step up to the plate and start. This company is not slowing down. They are the giant of the industry for a reason. They make smart moves. There was a long time where we hated on them, but they're making a lot of smart moves where it's like, when you're the industry leader, you have to set the tone for the rest of the promoters underneath you to be like, oh man, I gotta keep up, or I'm going to get left in the dust. So I love this move for WWE.
Yeah, I mean, the ratings thing is a big thing. Tuesday or Wednesday doesn't matter. If NXT pops a bigger number than Dynamite, they have a right to, on AEW side, to be ashamed, and on NXT side to be proud of themselves, because bringing Dom isn't like, if they're like, well, you brought your main roster, they're like, who's Dom Mysterio? You should have bigger stars on your main show as well. So
I got to be honest, as someone who loves AEW, I enjoy it more than NXT. I have to be honest right now. I hope NXT starts pulling more ratings than Dynamite, because I think it's going to hold Tony's feet to the fire and really push his booking into you got to elevate it, dude. You got to elevate it. So I hope NXT really starts nipping at the heels from a rating perspective.
Yeah, we'll certainly continue to watch that. Dom now he's going to be defending that title maybe on Raw and SmackDown, but potentially over on NXT. So it's going to be cool to see.
Yeah.
Let's get to our quick hitters and talk about all the other news in wrestling.
Quick hitters.
So here we are with our first quick hitter. Billy Gunn teased his retirement on AEW Collision on Saturday. So he had the Trios Championship match where him and the Acclaimed had a chance to take those Trios titles off House of Black. They came up short, and an emotional Billy Gunn took off his boots, untied them, and left him in the middle of the ring. The Acclaimed acted like they were surprised by the move. They were talking to Billy Gunn. He shoved them away, walked to the back. And again, this could be storyline fodder. We saw Colton and Austin drop a tweet saying they have their differences. Don't want to eulogize his career quite yet, but I mean, made his debut back in 1989. He's not quite 60, but looks better than ever. And curious what your thoughts are. Do you think he's retiring, or is this just another way to kind of advance the story with the Acclaim and keep things fresh?
I feel like with the shove, at first I'm seeing him untie his boots. I'm thinking, man, is this going to be his moment to say goodbye? Because he's also, he's acting as a coach / producer in the back. So he's got other duties.
Right.
But so when I'm seeing his untie his boots, I'm thinking, is he leaving? Is this it? Is this his swan song? Is this the way he goes out? But with the shove, I'm like, that pulls me back into this is storyline. So I don't know, man. I don't know if he would want a big emotional send-off. And don't get me wrong, Billy Gunn's a legend, but does he garner some big monumental spotlight to say goodbye? Does he want that? I don't know. I'm kind of 50-50 on it. I don't know if this is legit, if he's actually walking away. The guy looks like $1 million. It does kind of feel like maybe this is where this is a wrinkle in the Acclaim storyline. Who knows?
One of these days, I think there deserves to be a longer conversation about comparing Billy Gunn to all the other greats that have reinvented themselves and gotten over in a big way. Like you look at Billy Gunn's run throughout the history of wrestling, and you can go with, obviously, Smoking Guns were not over as well, like the big piece, but
they were good though. They were underrated.
Underrated for sure. DX was very over. New Age Outlaws were very over. Billy and Chuck was very over. That act was very over. And then you kind of take on with his main event push after he won King of the Ring, and they couldn't get the one Billy Gunn over. It didn't really work.
Buried him though. Rock buried him in a promo. He never recovered.
And then, I mean, to get this thing when you're 58, 59 years old, you get Scissor Me Daddy ass over again, where like you're over more than a lot of guys in the wrestling business. It speaks volumes about who he is and how he understands. So long form conversations deserving for Billy Gunn. I don't think he's done either. I think it's more story, and I think he's going to reunite with his two sons soon on screen, in my opinion.
He's at least a testament to surviving the wrestling business. Like he has found ways to make himself mean something in every era he's been in.
Yep. So we have an update for the G1. So as of right now, we have obviously our blocks here, and you guys can go through A block, B block, C block, and D block. Leading the A block is Sonata, 3-0 with 6 points. Pulling up the rear here, Hikuleo, 0-3 with 0 points. Also in the B block, Okada, the defending G1 holder here for the last 2 years. He's at 3-0 as well with 6 points. El Fantasma is 0-3. He had a really good match. Unfortunately, we heard about the passing of El Fantasma's grandfather that he found out prior to the match, decided to go through it anyway last night. And kudos to him, and thoughts go out to his family. The C block has an undefeated David Finlay, 6 points at the top, and Ishii is at 0 as well. Eddie Kingston, I know everyone's interested in Eddie Kingston. He's 2-1 with 4 points. He's had a good showing. He had a great match with Hanari last night, hard-hitting stuff. And shout out to Hanari's new look. He's got some New Zealand facial tattoos, where whole bunch of new aesthetic for him, so different edge. But D block, Zack Sabre Jr. is 3-0 with 6 points, but also Jeff Cobb is 3-0 with 6 points. And Yano is at 0 points. We know that what his role in this tournament. Alex Coughlin's 0-3, but he's had a good showing so far. He had a great match with Zack Sabre Jr. last night, and he's looked really, really good despite not winning. And Hiroshi Tanahashi, despite being kind of hurting on the build to Forbidden Door. He's out there doing his thing. He's 1-2 right now and trying his best to hold his own and hopefully get out the other side and get to Multiverse United for Impact and be in one shape, because we know the G1 can be grinding. But we'll keep you guys updated on the G1 standings and we'll see what happens. The other good person to talk about too is Kato Kiyomiya from Noah, 2-0-1 right now, 5 points. We had Dave being very complimentary of Kiyomiya. He's notably sort of being a guy that Okada sort of ticketed as being a new face to build around and giving him a lot, but he's at 2-0-1 right now, and it's a tight race at the top.
Yeah, and also in the B block we haven't mentioned is Osprey. Osprey's 2-1 with 4 points. So I've heard Dave talk about, this year's G1, there's a lot of fresh faces in it.
Yes.
It's kind of fun, seeing a lot of the future, who's going to step out, who's going to become those next big stars. Because I think we've kind of talked about New Japan. A lot of the old guard is unfortunately getting old. So they start building those new faces. And I'm loving Eddie Kingston really they're giving him some good shine in this tournament. And it looks like he's having a blast. So there's a lot of interesting stories in the G1 if you're not watching, but we'll keep you updated on it.
100%. The winner of the G1 will get a shot at Wrestle Kingdom at Sonata's championship. And if Sonata wins, he doesn't have to defend it. That's how it usually works. Or he can pick his other opponent or however they get there. But we'll see what happens. I mean, Okada feels like a given that he'd win, but I'd be, at 3 years in a row is kind of a tough draw. Me personally, looking at the C block, I'm circling David Finlay, even from the beginning. It looked
That's
like
me, man. Finlay,
I
think they're wanting to establish they're really wanting to reestablish Bullet Club. Bullet Club's always been an integral part. And now with him heading Bullet Club, I think him really having a big showing in the G1 brings them back to prominence. Cause I think there's some fans that are kind of like down on Bullet Club right now, but I think David Finlay is crushing it.
Yeah. And if you guys are looking for a match to check out too, Kenta looked the best he's looked in like 10 years in the match against Will Ospreay. Really rough stuff where stiff type of chops to the face and awesome kicks. Kenta and Will Ospreay showed out. So awesome to see. I mean, G1's been filled. I mean, usually, again, I keep saying before, we had Ospreay and Omega kind of set the tone with what a match of the year looks like. Usually a match of the year comes from this G1 4-week span.
Yeah.
And we'll see what happens. Maybe someone outshines them, but it's going to be a hard task to follow up on those matches we talked about. But moving in here, and we talked about this on Impact, Brace for Impact 10-10 on Thursdays, following Impact on Access. We have Nick Aldis wrapping up his run with Impact Wrestling. Very short. Now he's a free agent. This was dropped, I think, on Monday morning. Mike Johnson from PW Insider dropped the news here. And they talked about how this was always the plan, that he only wanted to do work a little bit past Slammiversary, and he'll be on this Thursday's tapings working Eric Young in a match, finish up in Windsor, Ontario. The other interesting part, Chad, is we have WWE interested in bringing him in, not as an in-ring talent, but as a producer, which, Aldis has a lot to give behind the scenes, but I still think he's someone who can give in front of the camera. And maybe they decide to do a little bit of both, but I don't know. I was looking forward to Aldis' running Impact, and selfishly, I'm a little bit upset about it, but we'll see what goes on. It's a weird thing because they put a lot of stock into him coming in. It felt like a big deal. And apparently this was always the plan that he's leaving after Slammiversary. Yeah,
I was really surprised by this, cup of coffee. I think the smallest cup of coffee we've ever seen.
Yes.
I was shocked, and to hear WWE wanting to bring him in as a producer, maybe that means front of cam and behind the scenes too. But if history is right, they tried to offer Eddie Kingston a role as a trainer at the PC at one point, and he didn't want to do that. He wanted to still be kind of on camera. I'm wondering where's Aldis's head with this. Does he still want to give to the business in front? Because you got to think a producer job with WWE is probably a pretty cush job as far as money. I'm sure it's high stress. We've heard Arn Anderson talk about how stressful that job can be. But if you're wanting to just kind of pause on the bump card and sit back and help the next generation, and is he ready to do that? We also have Aldis's Mickey James, his wife. She's also kind of flirting with free agency. I know she had that trash bag scenario with all of her belongings being thrown in a trash bag and sent to her when she exited WWE. Does she want to go back there? Is there hard feelings there? I doubt there is. I'm sure they squashed that. Mickey's a pro. But I would honestly be shocked to see both of them go back to that company, especially if it's not in ring for Aldis. We see how they treat kind of aging wrestlers. Like, is Mickey's not going to be at the top of the card mixing it up with the future of the business like she is in Impact Wrestling. Aldis, does he want to do that? I'm torn, man. I don't know. What do you think? Does he end up here? Where's Aldis go? What do you see?
I think he does, honestly. I mean, there seems to be a little bit of momentum here, and I think if he finished up in Impact, I think that is the place for him. I think if there wasn't a strong, viable interest from WWE, I think he's probably going. I would like to see him on screen in some capacity, but we've seen them collect these guys to put matches together and help train, and there's a lot of value to that. And maybe Aldis, as you said, is looking forward. Maybe he'll be able to, give back in a different way. I just thought he has a lot to give on screen, because the presentation for me for Impact was amazing in the short run we got it. And I love the old school world's champion that we get from Nick Aldis. It'd be a shame if we never see it again, but maybe they'll do it on screen. Who knows?
If it's on screen, I would love to see him in WWE. They need heels. Seth Rollins right now, there's not a lot of people like viable heels to challenge for that other title that Roman's not holding.
Right.
But if he's just going to go play producer, I mean, all the best to him if that's what he wants. But selfishly as a fan, I think his stuff in NWA and his recent cup of coffee in Impact, that heel side of Aldis, I feel like he hasn't even really got to stretch his wings in that character on a big stage. So who knows, man? There's All In too. Wembley. I don't know if he's even on Tony's radar, but that man was very integral in that first All In.
Yeah.
So, going to Wembley in a situation, him coming out, I don't know. But I do think WWE is in his future. I just hope it's with an on-screen role, not just behind the scenes.
So we also have GCW back in Japan, October 12th. They're going to be making their debut at Korakuen Hall. So they revealed on Wednesday that's going to be making their debut there, which is a big deal. GCW is currently in Japan for 2 shows at Shinkiba, the first ring, and GCW shows we've heard them take place at that exact venue. And they ran 2 shows there in 2019, 3 in 2020, and another 3 in 2022. So they're making a consistent home there. Big deal they're running Korakuen Hall. That's usually where New Japan Pro Wrestling is running their big shows. And cool to see GCW there. Moving outside of the carousel room, working Korakuen Hall, that's a big jump.
Oh, yeah. This just continues their kind of legacy and their MO of running very interesting, historic, cool venues, whether they're historic in or outside the pro wrestling world. It's fun to see GCW hit venues like this.
We also have Seth Rollins on an Impulsive podcast, and there's a couple of cool drops on this. He talked about CM Punk. He also talked about match quality as far as the star ratings from Dave Meltzer. But the other thing that came out of this was talking about how badly his back is hurting him, that he probably should have back surgery. So he said, and I quote, "My lower back has been at me since 2019. Probably should get some surgery on that, but trying to just do whatever I can to make sure I don't need it because I have a couple of stress fractures back there." We know wrestling is a tough business, and Seth Rollins, understandably, is very competitive to stay at the top of the card. This is his time to shine. Consolation prize be it, but he is getting sort of the rub to be that guy. And I think he doesn't want to take time off, doesn't want to risk losing that spot again, especially after that knee injury that he had when he was the guy. So I think he's going to push through, and I think it's, eventually he'll get them all taken care of when he's done in the ring. I think he's going to run until the wheels fall off.
Man, it worries me though. Anytime I hear people say back injuries, I'm dealing with a bad back, and then you say stress fractures back there. I know they've got professionals there. They've got great doctors. I'm sure he's making the right decisions in some regard, but that always worries me, man, because one false move, if it's already weakened back there, one false move could end your career if you don't get it taken care of. I don't know, man. It worries me to see a top guy pushing through injuries like that, because it just every bump, everything, and he's not a guy that holds back. So yeah. It's concerning.
So we also have Julia's first defense of the New Japan Pro Wrestling Strong Women's Championship will take place in Philadelphia next month. So New Japan Pro Wrestling is going to be doing 2 shows that weekend, Friday, August 19th and Saturday, August 20th. Saturday show is going to be the one with Impact Multiverse United. The first night will be a New Japan Strong show. Dave Meltzer noted on this week's Observer Radio that Julia will defend her newly won title on one of those shows. I'm fingers crossed. I think hopefully it will be on the Impact side of things, so maybe she can mix it up with some of the Knockouts division. But the ultimate plan is for her to take on Mercedes Moné. And I think Mercedes is probably going to try to take that belt back. We know that there's no timetable for Moné to come back yet. So Julia right now taking and running with it. She is one of the, highly touted women's wrestlers that's not in either AEW or WWE. She took that title on July 5th from Willow Nightingale. Love that she's getting a lot of play here. I like that she's coming to Philly and working North America. And I think she's going to be a huge star. We talked about her last week. I think there's a big piece that once WWE or Impact or whatever, AEW get their eyes on her, and I'm sure Tony Khan is well tapped into this, and Triple H, same with him. They know about what she's doing. I think it's a matter of time before she's elsewhere. So you might as well maximize the opportunities you can utilize her in New Japan, because it's a matter of time before she ends up being one of the biggest stars at whatever promotion she goes to, because she has that type of prominent drive. To me, I think she's amazing.
Huge name. And I mean, if they play their cards right, the joint show with Impact and New Japan could be a fun spot to link her up with Trinity for that Knockouts title. And then maybe in the fallout of that, Trinity's got that friendship with Moné. You could shoot an angle within that to build a feud with Moné to do in Stardom. So there's threads there between the 3 women to make it all work. I think I would be shocked if a major American company doesn't target her and go after her to sign.
Oh yeah. I think it's a matter of time. She's the next big thing about to break through. So we have an event featuring international talent in Israel that was set for September and not moving forward as scheduled. So Global Pro Wrestling Summit would have featured international talent such as Sting and RVD, which is going to be supposed to be September 14th at the Pay Arena in Jerusalem. Is canceled for other reasons. They talked about not being able to get the whatever, the whole thing with the promoters, All Stars Israel and Stage Time, and breach of contract on different fronts and logistics and blah, 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 saving face. They want to make sure fans get their money back, and rightfully so. The reason I'm including this in here is obviously people looked at this as potentially where Goldberg would have his retirement match. So I want to kind of follow up on this, but some big names here: Sting, Rob Van Dam, I mentioned before, Ultimo Dragon, Vikingo was supposed to be there, Psycho Clown, and Davey Boy Smith Jr. There was other people there, so a lot of things going on, but they sent out this whole long thing that's going to try to make a new event announced only and when all the funding's in place. So we'll see what happens, but Goldberg has to wait for his retirement match in Jerusalem.
Yeah, they don't want it to turn into that. What was the concert where the guy swindled all these
Fest?
Yeah. They don't want it to turn into one of those.
Fighter Fest.
Fighter Fest. Yeah. Fighter Fest was a play off of that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that they're smart. Get out in front of it before you really look bad.
So we had new WWE Women's Tag Team Champions crowned on Monday's Raw, and also part of this news is in part and parcel with Matt Cardona showing up with the title at DDT this weekend. But Chelsea Green and Sonya Deville defeated Raquel Rodriguez and Liv Morgan to win the titles for the first time. Rodriguez and Morgan held the title for only 16 days. They defeated Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler at Money in the Bank on July 1st. And here we are. Chelsea Green and Sonya Deville, your thoughts on this? Do you care about the tag division, the women's side of WWE, or is this more just like continue to bounce these titles around and try to make them mean something?
I think they're bouncing the titles around trying to find something that works. I do not care about the tag division right now. You have to make me care. I do think Chelsea and Sonya have the ability, if booking allows them, they have the ability to at least make an interesting segment out of these titles. My only worry with this division is who are they going against? Is it thrown together teams? I think Chelsea, the character she has right now, does have some steam behind it, and it's a fun little tag team. But I'm not worried about them. They're compelling, but who's the teams that they're going to be mixing it up with? I don't want to see thrown together teams. I don't want to see two singles people that don't have things going on, put them together. That's where I lose faith in these titles, but I'm happy for Chelsea and Sonya. I think this is the first time either one of them have held gold.
Yep.
So, yeah, show me what you're going to do with them, because I do think they're entertaining. I do think the fans enjoy them in the right way. It's just, where do we go from here?
So speaking of where we go from here, we have Rey Fenix and AAA sort of having disagreements, especially with being double booked with the ROH Death for Dishonor card. And Tony Khan is putting his foot down for Rey Fenix because he was supposed to work certain dates. AAA, I guess, was the recipient of the frustration on Tony Khan's end of losing out on all these other matches. Like, we're not losing the Lucha Brothers for this show. So now Rey Fenix is vacating the AAA Latin American and Cruiserweight Championships. So release statements. Essentially, this has to be everything to do with, and they were pretty transparent, where they found out there was an ROH pay-per-view that day, and the Mexico City Triple Mania press conference tomorrow. AAA will announce the match for both belts. So we're going to wait and see exactly who's going to be challenging for these belts. But it's a messy situation where these guys are double booked, and it seems like he's done wrestling for AAA altogether. He's too busy for promotions. And if you listen to the media call for the ROH Death for Dishonor card, Tony Khan pretty much vehemently said that Rey Fenix is just too busy, and we're going to hold on to him because he's being paid by us, and I'm not going to let him defend championships to be a nice guy. He wants to make sure he's on his roster, and rightfully so. So looks like Rey Fenix, and there's been a lot of that sort of message going on with AAA. There's been frustration on Conan's end about keeping talent, and we got the Omega and Vikingo thing, so I don't think the relationship is too frayed with Tony and Conan, but things like this need to be established because for too long, I think a lot of these guys are allowed to go out and do the things they want to do in lieu of the other card. And I think it's a perfect storm for Death for Dishonor, where there's so many injuries that he's like, absolutely not. I need Lucha Brothers to defend the titles and drop them ultimately to Aussie Open. He can't be over there defending the whatever going on for Friday's TV taping to defend the titles against Puma King. Figure it out, guys. Strip him for the titles.
We could do an entire episode on the back and forth between AAA and Inter Promotions name here. I feel like AEW's there's been so many ups and downs with them. It seems, they're consistently working together, but remember how FTR, that whole situation with the
CMLL stuff where AAA and CMLL couldn't work together?
Yeah, when they took the AAA titles off of FTR and then put over the NXT. He was leaving for WWE. Dragon Lee, I think
Dragon Lee. Yeah, he's in WWE right now.
Yeah, the way they handled that situation pissed Tony off, and then Tony will do something that pisses Conan off. They have mutual respect because they consistently work together. But the more and more you see like people stepping out of AAA, like even Roosh, I think, had an issue where like they wouldn't work because of Forbidden Door, the crossing all these boundaries, stepping on the wrong toes. Seems like a headache. Like, I get why certain promotions don't work with other promotions because it's just unnecessary stress sometimes. But I am glad there's that open door, and we do get to see people like Vikingo. We do get to see people like Omega go to Triple Mania. That's fun for fans, but from a promoter standpoint, I get the stress of it all.
The other crazy thing is, and this happens not just with these championships that he's the proud owner of, but he hasn't performed for AAA at all in 2023. So these titles just go for naught, where like no one gets to see them. And for the AAA audience, put it on a guy. If you want it on Puma King, you should have stripped him the title. What happened to the 30 days rule, 60 days, something like that? It's been almost a full year where Rey Fenix hasn't wrestled for AAA. And he's a double champion. What are we doing? Can you imagine there's an AEW belt that's taken hostage elsewhere for now, and he's just gone? It's ridiculous to think about. It's like bad planning on your end. If you're going to have Rey Fenix and then hold him to the fire, he needs to drop the title on some TV taping in July. Well, you should have better planning in the past. Like, where was that from December until now?
Well, it seems like they're wanting to put AAA titles on guys who have larger scope from other companies, and then they're unable to have those guys there all the time to defend these titles. Like, that I get from a promoter standpoint. You want to put the more popular guy who has more eyes on them. You want to put a title on them because it draws people in. But if that guy's only going to be able to be there to win the titles and he's never there to defend them, why book them to win? Like, it doesn't make sense.
Nope. And all right, so we also have another injury that happened at a WWE live event. So according to several fans in attendance at the WWE live event in Salisbury, Maryland, Bayley was injured during her match. She was in the four-way with Charlotte Flair, Asuka, and Bianca Belair where the injury occurred. She limped to the back with some help of the trainers. She tweeted photo of an iced knee saying she's all right. Seems like she's not going to miss any time. I'm sure she won't be on Raw for maybe a week. Maybe she won't wrestle, but I think she's going to be fine. We are out of the way of what could have been a very detrimental thing where Bayley could have been on the shelf for a long time because knees you don't want to mess with. We just talked about it.
Yeah, and she had that knee injury and, scary moment. If she's at the point in her career where another devastating knee injury could possibly hurt her, like as far as longevity, knees they're going to slow you down. So I was worried when it first came out, but the fact that she posted the ice knee and said she's going to be okay gives me a little bit of hope.
We also have Colt Cabana working backstage at AEW Dynamite. So this is reported by Fightful that he started working July 5th on AEW Dynamite in Edmonton, and he's going to be full-time with the company doing this as a producer and kind of working backstage. We last saw him on AEW screen in November where he wrestled Jericho in that match that kind of was taking a shot at Punk, really.
Yeah.
So just kind of keep it known, Colt Cabana clearly not going to be working backstage at AW Collision, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's good to have different crews though of producers. I know people are like, oh, they're split. I think it's good. It gives it a flavor. Each show has its own flavor. I'm here for it.
Absolutely. And speaking of flavor, we've been enjoying the voice of Ian Riccaboni on ROH TV, and he's been involved with a lot of great moments in wrestling. He signed a multi-year contract with AEW. And with Kevin Kelly sort of just doing his G1 thing, he's been a nice fill-in on Collision where he's getting a chance to really shine. He's actually approached about working with Collision full-time before recommending Kevin Kelly for the job. So Riccaboni gets great reviews backstage. Fans love his work. I'm a huge fan of him. And it is believed he will fill in for Kevin Kelly on a must-need basis for the remainder of time. So whether obviously G1 right now he's doing his thing, but elsewhere, if Kevin Kelly's needed in New Japan for whether if they need him for Wrestle Kingdom or Dominion or whatever, you have Saturday Riccaboni is nice guy to tag in. I mean, he's equal, if not, even better, which I love.
I mean, we were talking about the luchadors that are under AEW contract and how impressive it is. I don't think there's a more impressive group of commentators under AEW, under a contract with the company than AEW. All of their teams from ROH to Collision to Dynamite, gangbusters, even Rampage. They all have their own flavor. I'm a big Riccaboni fan. Love that he's signed on. It looks like he's going to be that permanent kind of go-to guy. If Kevin Kelly can't be there due to New Japan responsibilities, we're going to get Ian. Ian's a great fill-in. I love his stuff with Caprice on ROH. So yeah.
Well, with that said, let's see what Dave Meltzer said about the week in wrestling in his newsletter.
Dave raves.
Dave raves, and of course, come on, the match of the week, we all know what it was. FTR versus Jay White and Juice Robinson, July 15th from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And we were waiting with bated breath about his star announcement. 5 1/4. He spoke very highly of this match, and rightfully so. And we talked about it last week. The ridiculously good match, 2 out of 3 falls. And Meltzer said in here, for decades, I thought the best match ever, tag team wise, ever on U.S. television was a Midnight Express versus Fantastic match from Chattanooga, Tennessee, which went about 40 minutes and took up the entire 1-hour television show. There have been matches as good and a few better on pay-per-view, and the Young Bucks versus Penta and Phoenix match from Ontario, California was a totally different style, but so spectacular in many ways, and in some ways not as good. But the time did allow this match to be more epic and memorable than the other two. Plus, you have decades of ring evolution since the Midnight Express match in the late 80s. So before I read about what he said made it the most impressive, I think your thoughts, I mean, we spoke at length about it, but as we had another week to think about this match, it got better, right? It got
phenomenal. This, I think Dave said it, and I don't think it's hyperbole. I think this is the best TV tag team match I've ever seen. 58 minutes, essentially an Iron Man match in tag team form. This was phenomenal. The ebbs and flows, the peaks and valleys of the in-ring storytelling. This is just another feather in the cap of FTR, proving that they are one of the best in-ring storytelling tag teams in the business. For my money, they are the best, and second place is distant. I know everyone loves the Usos. They are very talented, top 5 tag team, but for me, FTR continues to show from we mentioned the Aussie Open match, obviously the trilogy with the Briscoes. This crown these guys, honestly, crown them. If you're fans of the Brainbusters and the Midnights, from the storytelling that they told, these are students of the game, and Jay White and Juice were there for it. And Jay White, man, underrated dude, underrated guy that needs to be, I think fans are, AEW fans specifically, are starting to pick up on this, and this guy's getting some steam behind him. And say what you want about Dave, Uncle Dave, that is, he's not got the best relationship with Dax and Cash. So if you think this guy's like picking favorites in his star ratings, come on. They were at odds a lot over the way that the Brawl Out and Punk was covered, and Dax's podcast he had. There was a lot of back and forth between Dave, Brian Alvarez, and FTR, but for him to give a 5.25, 5.25 star to FTR goes to show you how good this match was, because there was no bias here. He was blown away by the match. If you have not seen this 58-minute classic, what are you doing? Go seek it out. It was phenomenal.
So he did say what made the FTR versus White and Robinson match so impressive in ways a fan wouldn't know is that very little was planned out. So many had issues on the Canadian tour, crazy air travel and delays. Juice didn't arrive until 2 p.m. local time, and FTR had things they had to film. There was an attempt to get the match moved back, but the time in Calgary, it was 6 p.m. local time start. It was noted to us that those in the match felt they were not prepared to do an hour match, but still pulled it off. So it makes it even more impressive to see what they did. His performer of the week, Kento Miyahara, as I mentioned before, here and he's speaking very highly about Kento in this G1, and talks about him just doing the things. And he was talking about the match that he had with Nakajima on the Noah show, saying that many years, this got 5.25 as well. Many years to be match of the year, but it's going to be like a distant 6 with how many great matches we've had, even on the same week, which is crazy. Yeah. With Omega and Vikingo as well. But that's what Dave had to say this week, and a great newsletter to check out, by the way. So,
yeah, I love covering the star ratings because it makes so many people so pissed off that this guy, it's just his shtick, man. Like Dave says, like, it's my rating. Just take it. I'm not saying it's everybody's rating, but do
your own, guys. If you want your own rating, do you? What do you guys think? How was it? 5.25? Was it more? Was it less?
Exactly.
All right, let's get to the week ahead.
The week ahead.
All right. As you're listening to this, you are probably engaging in Raw as well. On mute, I'm hoping. So we have Logan Paul returning, Gunther and Drew McIntyre face-to-face, possibly building up to a IC championship match at SummerSlam. And we're getting Becky Lynch versus Zoe Stark, where Lynch gets a rematch against Trish Stratus if she wins. So Raw kind of, not too many things announced, but hopefully they keep their end of the deal on here. We mentioned Tuesday, NXT kind of becoming destination television. We're going to be having some other great stuff happening on the 30th, Great American Bash. So the NXT Championship on the line, Carmelo Hayes defends against Dragunov. The NXT North American Championship, Dominik Mysterio defends against Mustafa Ali. The tag titles on the line, Gallus defends against Tony D'Angelo, that is, in Stacks. The Women's Championship, Tiffany Stratton defends against Thea Hale. And Roxanne Perez versus Blair Davenport. So this is kind of their pay-per-view, PLE. This happens on USA. So NXT... on 7:30, actually. This is going to be on Sunday instead of Tuesday, but this is going to be next Sunday.
No, and huge on Dragunov. Huge. This kid loved Dragunov, so you've got my attention if Dragunov's involved.
We're moving over to on Wednesday night for Dynamite. We have the International Championship on the line, Orange Cassidy versus AR Fox, Darby Allin versus Swerve Strickland, Britt Baker versus Taya Valkyrie. We get Pac versus Gravity, MJF and Adam Cole promo, and then we get a tag match, 3-way, Jon Moxley and Claudio versus Best Friends versus Lucha Brothers. Cool to see Best Friends back on our AEW screen in a big way.
Now, workhorses, like I said earlier, you can always depend on those guys to show up. Dynamite's looking pretty good.
On Impact, we have Johnny Swinger versus Ziggy Dice in a loser leaves Impact match. Spoiler alert, Ziggy Dice's contract ran out, so enjoy that while you have it here. The Coven, Kylan King and Taylor Wilde versus Trinity and Danny Luna. And we're going to get Eric Young versus Nick Aldis in Aldis's final farewell here in Impact, maybe just for now. But Impact looking pretty good. This was taped in Windsor the night after Slammiversary. Check
out Brace for Impact, Thursdays 10:10 on our YouTube channel.
On Friday, we have the United States Championship Invitational, Rey Mysterio versus Santos Escobar. And we got Karrion Kross versus Carl Anderson on SmackDown. So there's been some heat here. I know the Rodan Boys were covering LA Knight not getting the nod for the U.S. Championship, losing, and Rey Mysterio winning. I don't know. We'll talk about that in the long form. We don't have enough time to get into that.
Yeah. And Karrion Kross, man, like do something with the guy. Just do something.
Yeah. For AEW Collision on Saturday, we have the AEW Tag Team Championship, FTR, Dax, and Cash defending against MJF and Adam Cole. We got Andrade El Idolo versus Buddy Matthews in a ladder match for Andrade's mask. And we have a 6-man match, Vikingo, Action Andretti, and Darius Martin versus Juice Robinson and the Guns. So Collision looking pretty stacked.
Yeah, man. Collision's bringing the heat. I like it.
And so far for SummerSlam 8-5, we're quickly approaching. I'm sure we're going to be doing a full episode dedicated to it. Maybe we'll bring young Anthony on. We'll maybe bring on some of the Raw Down guys. Maybe Mark or Jabo want to pop on and we'll talk about it. But we have Roman Reigns versus Jey Uso, and it looks like the championship and also the title of Tribal Chief will be on the line in the main event. Cody Rhodes versus Brock Lesnar, waiting for maybe we're going to get a stipulation. Seems like it could be the bull rope match. Who knows what they're going to do, but also Trish Stratus versus Becky Lynch, triple threat Asuka versus Charlotte versus Bianca, Gunther versus Drew McIntyre for the IC title, and Ronda Rousey versus Shayna Baszler. And looks like Ronda's kind of swan song here in WWE, but my biggest takeaway, dude, is the IC title feels fucking huge. Gunther versus Drew for the IC title feels like a main event level match. I think it's awesome to see where the IC title is.
I love it. I hope they pull the trigger on Gunther retaining, though. I want to see him continue, unless it means a push into a Seth Rollins program as a major heel. So,
yeah, that'd be amazing.
I'm very interested.
Tell me where to sign for that one. I would love it.
Yeah.
But that's all we got, man. This is the week in wrestling. So, let's do some shilling chat as we say goodbye to the folks here in the Turnbuckle Tavern.
Yeah, the Wrestling Tonight faithful, guys. You know the deal. If it's your first time tuning in, just go to theturnbuckletavern.com. We have shows between our streaming platform and our audio platforms, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. We have shows every day of the week for you guys. theturnbuckletavern.com. Go check us out. Follow, like, subscribe, tell your friends, write a review. It helps us. It goes a long way. Every night of the week, there's something different, and we cover the gamut of all pro wrestling. So give us some love. Check it out.
Make sure you guys check out Shot Nostalgia. On Friday, we're covering the 4th episode of Smoky Mountain Wrestling, July and August of 1994, the debut of the Gangstas. We talk about crazy that Lance Storm just posted a tweet about it where Chris Jericho broke his arm doing a shooting star. And went to the hospital, escaped to go work the match, and then went back the next morning to get the arm fixed with some steel rods in the arm. That's some old school shit. So
that's a G, man. That's a straight up OG move. I love it. Jericho's a badass.
So good. And also on Thursday, as you mentioned before, Brace for Impact, covering all things Impact Wrestling. And it might be solo, might have somebody else with me talking about all things Impact, but I'm going to get you guys all that you need drops on audio the next morning. So start your Friday right with the Raw Down boys as well. The Raw Down will be on before Race for Impact, covering all things WWE, breaking down what we wanted to talk about a little bit at length, but I think we would have went like a full hour and a half.
Oh, yeah.
At LA Night. Let the boys at the Raw Down handle it. Had a great conversation last week.
Yeah, and again, check out the flagship show on Thursdays on Apple and Spotify. We talk all things AEW, and can't wait to come back next Monday for you guys, talk some more pro wrestling. August is heating up. Like we said, August is going to be a big month for pro wrestling. A lot of good news, a lot of big things on the table. So keep it locked on Wrestling Tonight every Monday at 7 p.m. And Tuesdays, we drop the audio. But until next Monday, when we wine and dine with you kings and queens, stay out of the alley and away from those pork and beans. God luck and good speed.
Reach for the sky, boy.